Hey, everybody, it's Shit Talk Reviews. What's going on? I'm John. In the room with me, Derek. We're short one Dave today, but that's okay. We are three guys, usually, who sit around and talk about new albums that have come out. And that's what we're doing here. And it's Derek's pick this week. What are we listening to?
Kerry King from Hell I Rise. I would have picked it a while ago, but we wanted to really sink our bloody teeth into this gory massacre, and so here we are.
First impressions. You've been a Slayer guy forever.
I have. I'll tell the story. In 1984, Haunting the Chapel, I heard it for the first time, and I got to tell you, it changed my entire outlook. The Ghostbusters soundtrack at 10 years old was no longer my prime choice. It was Slayer. That led into, Metallica, and then it's just continued to, Death, so on and so forth, to where we are today. But Slayer changed my life, and for Kerry to still be here and coming back after Slayer, it's awesome to see. And my initial take is it's a Slayer record without Tom. Mm-hmm. When you have half of Slayer in Paul Bostaph and Kerry King, it's going to sound like Slayer. I thought I really liked Repentless, the last Slayer record. I thought it was a strong record. I remember telling anybody who would listen to me, it's like, yeah, Megadeth, yeah, they're okay. Anthrax, they're doing okay. Metallica's pretty good. But Slayer went out with a really solid record. And I would say that this falls into that category. And I actually like this record better than Repentless, because from start to finish, there's not a weak track on it. There's not, nothing was mailed in. And Josh Wilbur's work, Josh Wilbur, the producer, he's done Lamb of God, he's done Megadeth, he's done Soulfly, Gojira. He's got chops, and this record sounds like a really, really clean thrash record, and I really like it a lot.
When I first fired the record off, Diablo, the opening track, was a little unexpected for me. I guess I expected a little more Slayer vibe right out of the gate, and it wasn't quite there. It was not what I first expected to hear. However, after the 2-minute opening track, the second track fires off, and holy shit, it's undeniably Kerry King and Paul Bostaph. Just incredible. Very Slayer-esque throughout. There were a few songs in there that kind of can throw me for a loop, but some really, I thought, interesting choices given the history and Kerry King's style. Two Fists, the 10th track on the album. I mean, am I nuts? Or does it kind of have like a punk vibe to it almost?
Well, if you remember, they did do a punk cover album as Slayer, and
fair.
They're and he is a fan of all heavy music, and because this is his baby, he's allowed to do what he wants, right? He doesn't have to stay thrash. Heck, this record doesn't even stay on the Satan theme all the time. Very political, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah. It was it struck me as a big, strong Kerry King record. A lot of what I expected, a few things that I didn't expect. The production on it is super solid. Like you said, Josh Wilbur is a very pedigreed guy. So the album was in good hands. And I know that Kerry was very, very particular in putting this band together. And like you said, overseeing the material and making sure it was exactly what he wanted it to be. I read an article about Mark Acevedo, the singer, and he talks about how it was not at all easy to join this band, that it was a real process. It wasn't like, hey, we're buddies, I'm doing this thing, do you want to come and lay some tracks down? Mark put a lot of work into it before he was ever officially offered the gig. And I think that speaks to Kerry really wanting to make sure that this is exactly what he wanted before he pulled any of the triggers.
What I found fascinating was Mark Acevedo's vocals, because it's different than Death Angel. And he is able to pull off the Tom Araya yell, scream, whatever you want to call it, sustain it. And, I was very curious. I watched a live footage of one of their live shows, and he sustained it the whole show and sounded great. I mean, they Demel and Kerry, traded off with Mark yelling, and Paul was behind just blasting the skins. And, it doesn't scratch a Slayer itch. It certainly, it cuts, more into the already wounds that exist in Slayer fans' bodies. It's for me, it's just an extension of Slayer. It really is. It's kind of like,
reason. I mean, sorry. Yeah. Kerry was one of the driving riff riders with Slayer. It makes sense.
It's kind of like Black Sabbath. Tony Iommi and Geezer were always the consistency throughout the band, but they'd bring in different singers, from Martin to Dio. But it was always Black Sabbath. Sharon Osbourne fought to get the Black Sabbath name taken away. So they did Heaven and Hell, which that record was amazing. But in the end of the day, this, you probably could have said, slap the Slayer logo on it, and it would have been fine. Fans would have been like, yeah, this has been done before. We've seen this in the past. It just feels the same. Now, if I may talk over you and just dominate this whole conversation.
Please take it away.
What it occurs to me is that the lyrical content is much more politically aware than what Slayer used to be. And I'm going to just say this. I think Slayer it ended because of politics, and most likely because of Donald Trump. Prior to Slayer ending, Tom Araya was pretty vocal about Trump. He was putting out memes. He was putting out all these things. Then when you read what Kerry had to say about Tom Araya in the press leading up to this record, it's like, yeah, we're different people. Well, if you read the lyrics of this record, this is not a record for people who like Donald Trump. It's definitely flies in the face of everything that Donald Trump stands for, and it would stand the reason as to why Slayer no longer exists. Is that political divide, and we've all been there. We all know somebody who doesn't talk to somebody because of politics since 2015. Donald Trump is a divisive person. And sadly, I believe, based on what I can see here with the lyrical content of this record, and then what Tom was talking about with social media prior to Slayer's demise, and then what the media was, or what the press with Kerry was saying, it's obvious to me that Slayer is gone because of political divide in America.
Well, this is, as you said, a pretty pointed lyrical album. In that regard, and Kerry clearly had something to say.
If you look at Toxic, for example, sanity implies that there's intelligence. All I ever find is pure incompetence. I mean, it's, and the whole song, and it's a great song. It's wonderfully executed. It feels like a Slayer song all the way through. The difference is we're not talking about Satan. We're not talking about war. We're talking about toxic rhetoric, toxic government, toxic politics, and toxic hypocrites. Again, feels like it is talking to some of the issues that they may have had, the inner turmoil within Slayer. Look, I went and saw them twice on their final tour. You would have never known they were professionals. They went out and killed it every single night. But people do, they go their separate ways. I recently had to cut ties with a friend since third grade. We just don't see eye to eye. It happens, especially when you get older. And I think that's what certainly happened here.
Yeah, well, political views aside, sometimes the friendships they wear out, they get thin. And those guys had been a band for 43 years, was it? Something like that. And that's a lot of time to spend together. And then you throw in political discord, and but it's an unfortunate reality.
Yeah, Trophies of the Tyrant is an absolute grooving. I think it's just an epic, one of the most perfect songs on the record. And there's a lot of political themes in there that it's obvious to me what side of the fence Kerry and obviously boss staff, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, are on. So it is an interesting record. I love it. Lyrical content aside, I wish that bands didn't get all that overly political, but the reality is that sometimes political angst creates the best art in the world. And in this case, this was a really, really good politically charged thrash record that has a lot to say. And I'm happy that they did it.
Yeah, I would say angst in general can create great art. And again, given the times that we're living in right now, God, there is a lot of angst about a lot of shit. So
sure is.
Yeah, there's plenty of fuel for it.
Well, we try to stay out of it, and you know, but you know, and you and I talked prior to the podcast. If we didn't bring this up and we didn't bring what is out there in the press, we're not doing our jobs, right? And you know, we're not taking sides either way. Tom's not right, Kerry's not right. Just the reality is that there is a divide between the two of them that they obviously have a hard time getting over. They can't get in a room and get on the same page. Can they get on stage and go play a Slayer concert for a shit ton of money? Yes, they can, and they're doing that. There's a few shows that they have coming up. They'll get through their, you know, political divide. But, you know, I feel like Slayer, if there wasn't some kind of a political angst, probably would have continued on. But like a lot of things that's happened since 2015, words matter. Right.
Yeah. From
leaders of a country. And the leader of the country for a short time said some really hard things that people take to heart, and they feel it. They feel it. And you can feel that in this music. I felt it right away. And I knew exactly what was being talked about. And you don't have to be a fan of Trump, and you don't have to dislike Trump to like this record. It's just a great record all around. If you can put the political part of it aside, this is a solid ass thrash record.
Half of Slayer is proving that if Slayer had chosen or were able to continue working together, that they would have still been putting out good stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
So, any standouts on the record for you?
Yeah, I really like Idle Hands. I know Idle Hands was a track that was left over from Repentless, and he reworked it. Kerry reworked it. I love doing the devil's work. I mean, when Mark screams that and it kicks in, you know, I find myself driving down the road going way, way too fast. Residue is politically charged. It's a banger. Trophies of the Tyrant. I love the groove on that thing. I mean, that thing is one of my favorite tracks. Crucifixion, fantastic. And then Toxic. Crucifixation. Yes, I apologize. Yep. Good catch. But those are the ones that stood out. But I really like everyone. Like Shrapnel. I was in the car with my son, and he's just sitting in the back. I looked in the rearview mirror, and he's just bobbing his head to Shrapnel, you know, and it's like, how do you not? Rage is just a rager. Makes me want to go back to college and start throwing kegs around and, you know, having like muddy, you know, fights out in the woods and having bands come out and just throwing an amp down and ripping it up. I mean, that's what we did in Vermont, you know.
Just make sure you put your back brace on, take a couple of aspirin before and after, you'll be all right.
I'm still ready. This record From Hell I Rise, it makes me want to you know, to do some bone crushing. I'm still young, I'm still ready. I still feel like when I was 10, you know, hearing Haunting the Chapel for the first time.
Nice. Well, my standouts are Residue. Again, we share a lot of them on this. Idle Hands, I think, is fantastic. It's a ripper. Mark's vocals are great on it. He is a great singer. As you mentioned earlier, he is powerful and just nonstop. He's just brutal. But like you said, he can sustain it. That was in the article I read about him getting the job with Kerry. Apparently, Kerry did ask him at one point. He tracked a couple of songs, and Kerry said, "Look, those are badass, but are you going to be able to sustain this? Because it is so powerful and forceful." So yeah, great vocalist. Idle Hands. Tension is just fucking thrash, man. It's like, look it up in the dictionary. You could say sea tension. Rage, another ripper. Great song. It's a great record. I'm a fan. It's kind of what I expected, with a few departures. Like I said, like Two Fists. Very punk to me.
Now, did you hear anything on there you didn't like?
There were a few lead lines that to my ear sounded like there was maybe a note or two that either was a conscious choice that didn't match my preferences, or it was something that got by. I tend to believe that it was not a mistake and that it was a conscious choice based on how tightly Kerry kept his hands wrapped around everything. But that was pretty much it. I didn't find too much that was objectionable on this. You are the resident thrash fan on Shit Talk. I'm a bit more on the prog side. But that being said, for what this is, like, I expected a lot of Slayer on this, and I got a lot of Slayer on this, and I enjoy it. So do I think it's a good record? Yup. Do I like that he has got something to say? Yes, I do. I appreciate that. I love that art is a way that people can get those thoughts and opinions out, and that they can be welcomed by people who might not necessarily agree, or maybe it will serve to open somebody's eyes to a different point of view. And that's great too. So I am a fan.
The only thing that I was wishing was there was some of the higher pitched or higher toned guitar licks, like
higher up the neck.
You know, that was the one thing that I was looking for when I went back and listened to it like the 10th, 11th, 12th time, was like, there's not a Angel of Death, there's not a Raining Blood in there. But that's a minor gripe, because all the way through I like every song on the record.
It's interesting that you say that specifically about like one of those trademark Slayer riffs that you were hoping for. There were a couple in there that I thought, now this feels very much like I'm just waiting for Tom's voice to come through here. So you are a bigger Slayer fan than I, admittedly. So interesting that we both might hear the same thing through slightly different lenses. But, yeah. Well, what we got to put numbers on it. What's your number?
Yeah, it's 9 all day for me. I mean, I will listen to this. It falls into the same, bucket with Slayer for me. And I listen to a lot of Slayer in my life. So this is going to just slide in there for me. It's an extension of Slayer. It's another Slayer record, just with a different singer.
Yeah. I gave it an 8.5. I probably could go a little higher than that and be pretty comfortable with it. It's a little outside of my chosen lanes that I stay in because I'm closed-minded and
you like what you like, man.
Yeah, and I like what I like. But I think it's well done. You can tell that Kerry really gave a shit about it and really wanted things to be exactly as they are. That was not lost on me at all. So I enjoy it and would recommend it.
Yeah, I think this was liberation for Kerry. And you can see it in the press. You can see it in the lyrics. This is more of what he can control. And look, as you get older, you like what you like. I mean, we just talked about it. And I'm happy for him that he's able to kind of get out of Slayer, but still go back to Slayer and have a payday. But talk about what he wants to talk about and have a little bit more control. I think if you ask any musicians that are established that were in a big band, prior, once they go out on do their solo stuff, it's a little bit of a liberation because they don't have barriers. But I think he was smart enough to realize that if he didn't make this thing sound as close to Slayer as it could, people would be really disappointed. He would get torched in the press. So he did just enough to go away from Slayer, but not so much that we're like disappointed as fans.
Yeah. Well, it's solid stuff, and I enjoyed listening to it, and look forward to whatever the next album is. We'll have David back next time around, and it's his pick, so we'll know sooner than later, I expect, what we're going to be talking about.
I hope it doesn't suck.
It won't. I mean, the worst we've gotten to so far, I think, was maybe 5s. We rated 5s for an album, and that was my pick. So, hey,
that's true. Yeah.
That's right. If you're still with us, if you've made it this far, we appreciate you hanging around. If you, if this sort of thing appeals to you, hit the subscribe button and the bells and the likes and all that. We appreciate it. And we will see you next time, good sir.
Do the devil's work.
Later.